The next bill that we'll be addressing is protecting sacred Native heritage. And I'm so honored to introduce Jean-Luc Pierite, an enrolled member of the Tunica-Biloxi tribe of Louisiana. Originally from New Orleans, he now resides in Jamaica Plain. He serves as the president of the North American Indian Center of Boston. Jean-Luc, over to you.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you to everybody. As Samantha noted, I am even though I identify as an Indigenous person, I am a guest on these lands. So I'm very grateful to all of our tribal representatives of local tribes that are here tonight. Thank you so much for stewarding this land that it holds and sustains us. I've been asked to talk about an act to protect Native American heritage. This is a bill which has actually four bill numbers: H3377, H3385, S2239, S2240. Special thanks to our Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, our Representative Nika Lagardo, and also members of Massachusetts Artists Leaders Coalition, who helped to draft the language of the bill. I want to build off some of the themes that we heard earlier this evening in regards to mascots, especially what it means to actually objectify Native peoples. And I start my discussion with this quote from Chairwoman Cheryl Andrews Maltais back in 2016, when she said, "Tribal cultural heritage belongs to the tribal community of its origin as a whole, and by tribal custom cannot be alienated from that community by any individual or group without the express, free, prior, and informed consent of that tribe." So what does that specifically mean, and what does that mean when we're talking about sacred objects, funerary objects, even at times human remains, and what is the need for this bill when we do have federal legislation, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. When I was born, after nearly 180 years of recognition effort by my home tribe, the Tunica-Biloxi, we still were not recognized by the federal government. In 1969, an amateur archaeologist or grave robber excavated one of our ancestral home sites. And at the time of my birth, it was actually that collection, which was then called the largest cache of Indian trade goods, was leased to the Harvard Peabody Museum. This is a reality that that many of our Indigenous peoples face when our remains, when our funerary objects, when our sacred objects are excavated illegally and then brought into private collections, or even what is the focus of this bill, publicly funded collections. And so I want to lay that groundwork first. And I also want to say that even though I say objects, what we're really talking about is our ancestors. So when we say funerary objects, when we say sacred objects, when we say human remains, these are things that are intertwined. These are things that are indicative, you know, the spirits carry for these objects, and that's why they're so sacred. We hear stories at NAICOB of students at Harvard going through collections and feeling just the heaviness of being in that space, being in a space in which ancestors are held captive. And so what we're actually aiming for with this piece of legislation is to tie up some loose ends when it comes to the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. Currently, it only affects publicly funded entities that receive federal funding. For this bill, we're actually targeting all publicly funded entities, regardless of whether they receive federal funding or not within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Because as our peoples, as our spirits, as all that we hold sacred is currently being held It is now time for all of that to go home. It is time for us to be made whole as peoples, and that is why we are supporting an act to protect Native American heritage. Thank you, Samantha Tikach.